Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tech Podcasts, Dev Technosys. I'm your host, Yash, and today we're going to talk about something that affects not just science and technology, but the health and future of people across the globe. It's a subject that sits at the intersection of innovation, public health, and policy. The recent funding cuts in the United States for mRNA vaccine research. We all know how mRNA vaccines played a pivotal role during the COVID-19 pandemic. They weren't just fast to develop, but also proved highly effective, saving millions of lives. But now, as funding for ongoing mRNA research faces cutbacks, the big question is, what does this mean for the future of vaccine development, and how could it impact public health innovation worldwide? To dive deep into this, I'm joined by Dr. Michael Carter, a biomedical research policy expert who has advised health agencies and biotech startups on vaccine development strategies. Dr. Carter, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Yash. It's a pleasure to be here. This is a topic that really needs urgent attention because the consequences of funding cuts in this area are both immediate and long-term.
Let's start with the basics, Dr. Carter. For listeners who may not be familiar with the technical details, could you briefly explain what mRNA vaccines are and why they've been such a breakthrough?
Of course, mRNA vaccines work by delivering a piece of genetic code, messenger RNA, into the body. This code instructs cells to produce a harmless version of a protein from the target virus. The immune system then learns to recognize and fight the real virus if it ever encounters it. What makes mRNA technology revolutionary is speed and adaptability. Unlike traditional vaccines that can take years to develop, mRNA platforms can be updated in weeks. That's how we got COVID-19 vaccines so quickly in 2020.
Right, so they basically changed the entire vaccine development timeline.
Exactly. Beyond COVID-19, mRNA is also being researched for flu, RSV, HIV, and even cancer vaccines. So cutting funding at this moment is like hitting the brakes just as the car is gaining speed.
That's a powerful analogy. Let's talk about the funding cuts themselves. What's happening in the U.S. right now and why?
Well, after the urgency of the pandemic, there's been a political and economic shift. Some policymakers feel that the immediate crisis has passed, so they're reallocating funds to other areas. The National Institutes of Health and other agencies have reported reduced budgets for ongoing mRNA projects. Pharmaceutical companies, too, are seeing less government support and are scaling back clinical trials.
And what's the impact of this scaling back?
The short-term impact is fewer clinical trials for next-generation vaccines. For instance, mRNA flu vaccines were in advanced testing phases. Cuts could delay their rollout by years. Long-term, it risks slowing innovation in related fields like personalized cancer treatments, where mRNA has huge potential. And from a global perspective, if the U.S., a leader in biotech, reduces investment, international collaboration and confidence may also weaken.
So it's not just a national issue, but a global ripple effect.
Exactly. The U.S. has been the engine for much of the biomedical innovation pipeline. Reduced funding here sends shockwaves through the entire global ecosystem.
Let's bring public health into the picture. How do these cuts affect everyday people?
That's the heart of the issue. Funding cuts translate into delays in vaccine access. Imagine a future pandemic. Without strong mRNA infrastructure, the world could face months or years of vulnerability. On a more routine level, think of annual flu shots. With mRNA, we could have vaccines tailored each season with unmatched precision. Without it, we're stuck with older methods that aren't as effective. And for cancer patients, promising trials could be shelved due to lack of funding.
That's sobering. It almost feels like we're pulling back just when we need to push forward.
That's exactly right. Momentum is crucial in scientific progress. Once researchers lose funding, labs shut down, talent moves away, and it's very hard to restart.
Let's switch gears slightly. You mentioned global ripple effects. Could this create opportunities for other countries to step in?
Definitely. Countries like China, Germany, and South Korea are heavily investing in biotech and vaccine technologies. If U.S. support dwindles, these nations may take the lead. That could shift not just innovation, but also economic and geopolitical influence in biotech.
So, in a way, it's not just a health issue, but also about global competitiveness.
Absolutely. Biomedical innovation is one of the key drivers of future economies. By cutting funding, the U.S. risks losing leadership in a field it helped pioneer.
Now, let's think about solutions. What could policymakers or organizations do to counterbalance these funding cuts?
There are a few paths forward. First, public-private partnerships could fill the gap. Tech companies, pharmaceutical firms, and governments could collaborate to share costs and risks. Second, philanthropic organizations, much like they've done for malaria or polio, could step in with grants. Third, international collaborations could pool resources to keep research alive. And finally, there needs to be better public communication. People need to understand that funding vaccines isn't just an emergency expense, it's an investment in resilience.
That's a very important point. If the public sees vaccines only as pandemic tools, they may not support long-term research.
Exactly. Vaccines prevent millions of deaths each year quietly, behind the scenes. We only notice them when there's a crisis, but constant innovation is what keeps us prepared.
From the perspective of startups and innovators, like those our listeners at Dev Technosys work with, what role can technology companies play here?
A significant one. Health tech startups can create platforms for clinical trial management, AI-powered drug discovery, or patient engagement apps that make vaccine rollouts smoother. Even if government funding shrinks, startups can attract venture capital by showing the business potential of mRNA technology. Plus, software and AI tools can reduce research costs, making innovation more sustainable.
So there's a clear intersection of technology and health here, which means the private sector still has opportunities to drive change.
Absolutely. In fact, many of the breakthroughs we saw during COVID-19 came from collaborations between biotech firms and technology companies. That synergy must continue.
Dr. Carter, before we wrap up, I'd like to hear your outlook. If funding continues to decline, where do you see mRNA vaccine development 5 or 10 years from now?
If cuts persist, I fear progress will stall significantly. We might see missed opportunities in curing or preventing diseases like HIV or cancer, and the next pandemic response will be much slower. On the other hand, if awareness grows and funding is restored or supplemented through alternative sources, we could see a golden era of vaccines, personalized, adaptable, and more effective than ever. The trajectory depends heavily on the choices we make today.
That's a powerful message. It really underscores that funding isn't just about science budgets, it's about human lives and the future of healthcare innovation.
Exactly, Yash. Science moves forward only when we keep the momentum alive.
Dr. Carter, thank you so much for joining us and sharing such valuable insights.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great discussion.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you're working in healthcare, biotech, or technology, think about the role you can play in sustaining innovation. Whether it's supporting startups, advocating for research, or simply staying informed, every effort counts. This is Yash, signing off from Tech Podcast's Dev Technosys. Until next time, stay healthy, stay informed, and stay innovative.